Grandma, you seriously bought me this? I thought she'd finally get you something nice. I mean, these probably cost, what, 20 bucks?
They looked comfortable. I'm glad you opened them.
Grandma?
I should get going.
She slowly stands. No one notices the tears in her eyes except Ava's younger brother, Ethan. Grandma. Rose simply smiles. Grandma Rose. I should get going. She walks toward the front door. She never once looks back. Ava thought she had just laughed at a cheap birthday present. She had no idea she just mocked 5 years of quiet sacrifice. And by the time she learned the truth, it would almost be too late to tell her grandmother she was sorry. 24-year-old Ava Mitchell lived in Columbus, Ohio. From the outside, her life looked like the kind many people envied. She had nearly 80,000 followers across social media, a marketing job she tolerated more than enjoyed, and a habit of making everything appear more exciting online than it really was. Most mornings began the same way. Coffee, mirror, phone, post, repeat. Her apartment wasn't luxurious, but careful camera angles made it seem that way. A borrowed designer handbag appeared in photos more often than it appeared in real life. Flowers bought once every few weeks somehow lasted through dozens of uploads. She had become incredibly good at creating a version of herself people admired. Unfortunately, she had started believing that version herself. It wasn't vanity that had shaped her. It was insecurity. Growing up, Ava had always felt like she wasn't enough. Not smart enough to be the academic success her older sister had become. Not athletic enough to earn trophies like her younger brother. Not wealthy enough to fit in with classmates whose parents vacationed overseas every summer. So she learned something else. Pure successful. People stopped asking questions once everything looked perfect. Her job paid the bills. Barely. After rent, car payments, student loans, phone bills, streaming subscriptions, and credit card debt from buying things she hoped would help her career. There wasn't much left. Every month she promised herself she'd stop spending. Every month something new convinced her she couldn't. A nicer outfit, better lighting equipment, a weekend trip she couldn't really afford. It always felt like one more purchase would finally make her feel successful. It never did. The unopened bills sat beside a carton of milk that expired 2 days earlier. She ignored both. Ignoring problems had become easier than solving them. Every Sunday evening her mother called. Sometimes Ava answered. Sometimes she let it ring until voicemail. Her mother usually talked about ordinary things. How Ethan's college classes were going. How the neighbor finally repaired his fence. How Grandma Rose had baked too many apple pies again. Small things. Simple things. The kind of conversations Ava always believed she could have another day. Grandma Rose never called often. She didn't like interrupting people. Instead, she mailed handwritten birthday cards. Christmas cards. Thank you notes. Little reminders that someone loved you. Even if you forgot to answer. One envelope had arrived 3 days earlier. She hadn't opened it yet. She assumed it contained another sweet message. She'd read it later. What Ava rarely admitted, even to herself, was that Grandma Rose had been the safest place in her childhood. When her parents worked late, Grandma picked her up. When she scraped her knees riding a bike, Grandma patched them. When nightmares woke her crying, Grandma stayed beside her until sunrise. She never raised her voice. Never forgot birthdays. Never arrived empty-handed. Even if empty-handed meant homemade cookies instead of expensive toys. Rose believed gifts didn't need to impress people. They needed to remind people they were loved. Unfortunately, the world Ava now lived in measured love differently. By brands. By prices. By appearances. Grandma Rose had lived in the same little house for 43 years. After her husband died, she stayed. Mostly because leaving felt like saying goodbye twice. The roof had needed repairs for years. The wallpaper had faded. The porch creaked louder every winter. But inside, everything had a story. Every photograph. Every clock. Every recipe card. Every quilt. Rose survived almost entirely on Social Security. She didn't complain. She adjusted. She clipped coupons. Knitted blankets for neighbors. Repaired clothes instead of replacing them. Made soup that somehow lasted 4 days. She considered waste almost disrespectful. Not because she enjoyed living simply, because she'd once known what it meant to have almost nothing. Every Friday, she added something, sometimes $5, sometimes $1, occasionally only coins. Then she smiled, closed the cabinet, and quietly continued her day. No one knew about the jar. Crosstown, Ava had no idea. 3 weeks before her birthday, Rose walked slowly through a local shopping center. She stopped in front of a shoe store. Not because she needed shoes, because she'd remembered something Ava mentioned months earlier. My feet always hurt after work. Rose had remembered. Ava hadn't. The shoes weren't fashionable. They weren't designer. They weren't trendy. But the saleswoman explained they had excellent arch support. They're comfortable enough to wear all day. Rose smiled. That's exactly what she needs. She checked the price, then quietly folded the box closed. It was more than she'd expected. She thanked the employee, walked out, and looked back through the glass. The next Friday, more money disappeared into the jar. The Friday after that, more. Weeks became months. Months became nearly a year. Every time Rose wanted something for herself, she waited. The sweater with holes in the sleeves. The new kettle. Replacing her old reading glasses. Each time, she told herself they could wait. The shoes couldn't. The tape holding the glasses together grew yellower with time. Rose laughed every time they slipped. They're still working. She never mentioned any of it. Not even to her daughter. Not because she wanted praise. Because love wasn't something she believed should keep score. Meanwhile, Ava spent nearly $200 on a birthday dress. She told herself it was an investment. People expected nice pictures. The week before her birthday, she met friends for dinner downtown. Everyone talked about gifts they hoped to receive. Jewelry, weekend trips, new phones, luxury handbags, designer sneakers. Someone asked Ava what she wanted. She smiled. Honestly, she shrugged. Just don't give me something boring. Everyone laughed. She laughed too. She had no idea someone sitting quietly at home was still adding coins to a glass jar. She wrapped the gift slowly, making every fold as neat as she could. Then she wrote a card in careful handwriting. I hope these help your feet after long days. I know you've been working hard. Love always, Grandma. She smiled, placed the card inside, and gently tied the ribbon. She looked at the finished package for a long moment, then whispered to herself, I hope she likes them. She had no way of knowing that in just a few days, the gift she'd spent years saving for would become the one thing her granddaughter wished she could take back. Life has a strange way of warning people before it changes forever. Problem is, the warnings rarely look important when they first appear. Sometimes they're just an unanswered phone call, a forgotten birthday card, a pair of taped reading glasses, or a grandmother quietly saying she doesn't need anything. Ava was about to miss every one of those warnings. The week of her birthday arrived faster than expected. Work had become overwhelming. Her company had landed a new client, and every employee was expected to work late. The office buzzed with deadlines, last-minute revisions, and endless meetings. By the time Ava got home each night, she barely had enough energy to microwave dinner before collapsing into bed. One evening, as she was reviewing campaign notes, her phone vibrated. Mom calling. She stared at the screen. She knew what the call would be about. Her birthday dinner. Family plans. Questions she didn't have the patience to answer. The phone rang until it stopped. Seconds later, a voicemail notification appeared. She didn't listen to it. Instead, she tossed the phone onto the couch and returned to her laptop. The next morning, another missed call. This time from Grandma Rose. That surprised her. Rose almost never called. For a moment Ava considered calling back. Then another work email arrived. Another deadline. Another distraction. I'll call tonight. She didn't. Crosstown. Rose looked at the old landline resting quietly on her kitchen table. She smiled anyway. She's probably busy. She folded laundry, watered the flowers outside, made herself tea, and never mentioned the missed call again. That was one thing everyone loved about Grandma Rose. She never made people feel guilty for being busy. She simply waited, even when waiting hurt. She checked the ribbon one last time, straightened the corners, ran her fingers gently across the wrapping paper. It looked beautiful, simple, neat, made with care, exactly the way she liked everything. Then she reached into her apron pocket and unfolded a tiny receipt. Not to check the price, just to remember the day she'd finally been able to buy the shoes. She smiled to herself before slipping the receipt back into her pocket. No one knew she had visited that store 7 different times before she finally had enough money. No one knew she had walked home instead of taking the bus for nearly 8 months. No one knew she'd skipped buying herself a winter coat that year. Because some sacrifices are invisible until they're too late. 2 days before her birthday, Ava met Jessica. Jessica had been her closest friend since college. Confident, funny, always chasing the newest trends. They wandered through an upscale shopping district, comparing outfits for the birthday dinner. Jessica pointed toward a designer handbag. "You should get it." Ava laughed. "I definitely shouldn't. But you will." "I probably will." They both laughed. Neither mentioned the credit card balance growing quietly at home. They eventually stopped for coffee. Jessica scrolled through social media. "Have you noticed something?" Ava looked up. "What?" "People don't care what actually happens anymore. They care how it looks." Ava smiled. "That's basically my job." Jessica nodded. "So make your birthday look expensive." That sentence stayed with Ava much longer than it should have. She bought the dress, then matching heels, then decorations, then professional balloons. Everything looked perfect. Everything felt wrong. She ignored that feeling. Sometimes pride doesn't announce itself loudly. Sometimes quietly whispers, "You deserve better," without asking whether better is really what matters. That evening, a package arrived from an online store. Another unnecessary purchase. As she carried it inside, she stepped over 3 unopened envelopes. One was a utility bill. Another was a credit card statement. There was Grandma Rose's birthday card, still unopened. Crosstown. Rose wasn't thinking about money anymore. She was thinking about Ava. She remembered the little girl who used to insist on wearing mismatched rain boots. The little girl who believed peanut butter belonged on pancakes. The little girl who cried when butterflies died. Children changed. That was normal. Adults became busy. That was normal too. Rose simply hoped that somewhere underneath adulthood, her granddaughter was still there. Her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, walked over carrying fresh tomatoes from her garden. "You heading to the birthday dinner Saturday?" Rose smiled. "I wouldn't miss it." "You excited?" "I am." Mrs. Jenkins noticed the carefully wrapped package beside the rocking chair. "You spoil those grandkids." Rose laughed softly. "Oh, I don't know about that." Mrs. Jenkins picked up the gift. "It's heavier than it looks." Rose's eyes sparkled. "I hope she'll use them every day." Mrs. Jenkins had no idea how much those words meant. Rose didn't hope the gift would impress Ava. She hoped it would make her daily life just a little easier. That had always been her definition of love. Making someone else's burden a little lighter. Saturday finally arrived. Cars lined the street. Family members filled the house with conversation. Children raced through the hallway. The smell of grilled food drifted from the backyard. For a few hours, everything felt ordinary. Ava arrived wearing the expensive dress she'd purchased 2 days earlier. Everyone complimented her. Her cousins admired her outfit. Friends snapped photos. Her mother hugged her tightly. "You look beautiful." Ava smiled. "Thanks, Mom." Grandma Rose arrived 10 minutes later. She stepped carefully from her old sedan. Her floral dress had been mended near one sleeve. Her shoes had clearly seen many years. But she carried the wrapped present with both hands as though it were something precious. Because to her, it was. When she entered, the room brightened. Children rushed toward her. Adults greeted her with hugs. Even people who hadn't seen her in months instinctively smiled. Rose had that effect on people. She made every room feel calmer. She hugged Ava. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." "Thanks, Grandma." Rose handed her the gift. "I hope you'll open mine later." Ava smiled politely. "I will." She placed it near the other presents. Without noticing, Rose looked relieved. She wanted Ava to enjoy opening it without feeling rushed. Some gifts carry expectations. Others carry hope. Hope is much heavier. The evening moved on. Dinner ended. Cake disappeared. Candles were blown out. Phones came out for pictures. Then someone shouted, "Open the presents." Cheers followed. Boxes piled around Ava. Perfume. Gift cards. Wireless earbuds. Jewelry. Designer sunglasses. She thanked everyone. Smiled for photos. Laughed often. Eventually, only one package remained. The smallest one. Wrapped in faded floral paper. Jessica leaned toward Ava. "That's from your grandma?" "I think so. You should save the sentimental one for last." Ava laughed. "Exactly." She untied the ribbon. Folded back the paper. Lifted the lid. Inside, a pair of simple white sneakers rested neatly in tissue paper. For 1 second, the room stayed perfectly still. Ava blinked. Then, a small laugh escaped before she could stop it. She thought it was harmless. Just an awkward reaction. Just a moment. But some moments cannot be taken back. No one in the room knew the next few seconds would become the moment they would all remember years later. Not because of the gift, because of what was said, and because of who heard it. For a heartbeat, Ava simply stared at the shoes. They were clean, plain, comfortable looking. Nothing like the stylish sneakers she'd saved in online wish lists. She picked one up, turned it over in her hands. Then she laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel in her mind. It was the kind of nervous laugh people make when they don't know what else to do. Unfortunately, everyone heard it differently. Ava, trying to joke. "Grandma, these are practical." A few cousins laughed. Jessica covered a smile with her hand. One cousin whispered, "They look like hospital shoes." Another quietly added, "Or something a nurse would wear." More laughter. Small. Scattered. But enough. Ava looked around. People were smiling. So she smiled too, trying to keep the moment light. They're comfortable, I guess." She held one shoe higher. "I've literally never worn shoes like these." Another chuckle. Someone muttered, "They're definitely not your style." Across the room, Grandma Rose remained completely still. She didn't interrupt. She didn't defend herself. She simply folded her hands together. "Ethan," quietly, "they're actually nice." Nobody answered him. Rose finally spoke. Softly, almost too softly to hear. "Grandma Rose, I thought your feet might hurt after work." Silence. Ava nodded awkwardly. "Yeah. Thanks." But the warmth was gone. The moment had already slipped away. Rose stood, smoothed the front of her dress, smiled. "I should probably head home." Ava looked surprised. "So soon?" "Oh yes. It's getting late." She hugged Ava. The hug lasted only a second. Then she turned toward the front door. "Ethan, Grandma, let me carry your purse." Rose smiled. "I've carried it long enough." Those words sounded ordinary. At the time, no one chased after her. No one noticed she had left before dessert was even cleared away. Except Ethan. He stood by the window, watching her old sedan disappear down the street. Something didn't feel right. He couldn't explain why. Some people cry loudly. Others cry on the drive home, where no one can hear them. The party continued. Music returned. People laughed again. But something had changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. A quiet discomfort settled over the room. Ava felt it too. Although she couldn't explain it. Jessica leaned closer. "I don't think she took that well." Ava sighed. "I wasn't trying to be mean." "I know. You know how grandmas are." Jessica shrugged. "They're sensitive." Ava looked toward the empty hallway where Rose had disappeared. For a brief second, she considered calling her, and said, "Someone asked for another group photo." She smiled for the camera. The feeling passed. Rose woke early. Like always. She made tea, fed the birds, watered the flowers, folded laundry. Nothing looked unusual, yet everything felt heavier. She walked into the living room. Her late husband's framed photograph rested beside an old clock. She sat in her favorite chair, looked at his picture, and smiled sadly. "I guess I missed the mark." Then she quietly laughed at herself. "They're young." They like different things. It's all right. No bitterness. No anger. Only disappointment. Not in Ava. In herself. She truly believed she'd chosen the wrong gift. That was Rose's way. She almost never blamed other people, even when they deserved it. She picked up the jar. Only a few coins remained. She gently shook it. The familiar sound was gone. For years, that tiny clinking noise had reminded her she was getting closer. Closer to buying something she hoped would help Ava. Now, the jar was empty. Its purpose fulfilled. She smiled anyway, placed it back inside the cabinet, and closed the door. Crosstown. Ava slept until nearly 10. Her apartment still looked like a celebration. Deflated balloons floated near the ceiling. Gift bags covered the couch. Wrapping paper littered the floor. She began organizing everything. Gift cards together. Receipts together. Boxes into recycling. Then she picked up Grandma Rose's shoe box. She hesitated. For some reason, she didn't throw the wrapping paper away. Instead, she folded it carefully, without knowing why. That afternoon, her mother called. This time, Ava answered. "Hi, Mom." Her mother's voice sounded unusually calm. "Did you get home all right?" "Yeah." A short pause. Then, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Were you disappointed with your grandmother's gift?" Ava frowned. "I mean, it just surprised me. I wasn't trying to hurt her." "I know." Another pause. "But you did." The words landed harder than Ava expected. "Mom." "I said thank you. You laughed first." "I wasn't laughing at her." "Maybe not. But that's what she heard." Ava rubbed her forehead. "I didn't mean it like that." "I believe you. But intentions don't erase moments." Her mother sighed softly. "I stopped by this morning." "How's Grandma?" "She's all right." "But..." "What?" She asked if she should return the shoes. Ava's stomach tightened. "What?" "She thought maybe you'd rather have something else." For the first time, Ava felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel the night before. Not embarrassment. Not annoyance. Guilt. Without thinking much longer, Ava grabbed her keys, the shoebox, and drove across town. Rain began halfway there. The windshield wipers swept steadily back and forth. Each mile gave her more time to replay the party. Her own laughter. Everyone else's laughter. Grandma's smile. That quiet goodbye. The memory no longer felt harmless. She parked outside the little white house. Everything looked exactly as it always had. The flower pots. The wind chimes. The old rocking chair. Home. Rose answered the door almost immediately. She smiled warmly, as though nothing had happened. "Ava. What a nice surprise." For a moment, neither of them knew what to say. Then Ava held up the shoebox. "I came to..." Her words disappeared. Rose rescued her. "Come inside." Everything inside looked frozen in time. The same grandfather clock. The same crocheted blankets. The same scent of cinnamon and tea. Ava hadn't visited in nearly 6 months. She suddenly realized nothing had changed here. Except Grandma. She looked smaller. Not dramatically. Just enough to notice. Rose disappeared into the kitchen. "I'll make tea." Ava wandered slowly through the living room. Her eyes landed on dozens of family photographs. Birthdays. Graduations. Christmas mornings. Every frame held someone smiling. Every frame had been dusted recently. Then she noticed something strange. One frame sat empty. The photograph had been removed. Only faint marks showed where it had rested. She picked it up. Nothing. Narrator. It was a tiny detail. Easy to overlook. But it was the first clue. That Grandma Rose had quietly been giving up more than anyone realized. As Ava set the frame back down, a cabinet door near the kitchen stood slightly open. Inside, she caught a glimpse of an old glass savings jar. Almost empty. Only a handful of coins remained. She stared at it, curious. What had Grandma been saving for? She had no idea that the answer was sitting beside the front door. Inside a plain white shoebox. Some people leave behind fortunes. Others leave behind evidence of love. The difference isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in what they chose to go without. Ava stood in front of the cabinet for several seconds. She wasn't trying to snoop. She was simply curious. Why would Grandma have a nearly empty savings jar hidden away? What had she been saving for? Before she could think any further, Rose returned from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs of tea. Rose noticed where Ava was looking. Oh, she smiled. I forgot to close that. She walked over and gently shut the cabinet door. There was no panic. No attempt to hide anything. Just quiet habit. Ava almost asked about the jar. Instead, she stayed silent. Silence has a strange way of creating distance, especially when both people are hoping the other will speak first. For several minutes they talked about ordinary things. The weather, work, Ethan's college classes, the tomatoes growing in Rose's tiny garden. The conversation felt pleasant, normal, almost as if the birthday party had never happened. Almost. Finally, Ava looked at the shoebox resting beside the couch. I wanted to apologize. Rose looked surprised. You don't have to. I laughed. It wasn't my best moment. Rose reached over and gently touched Ava's hand. We all say things we wish we could take back. I know you weren't trying to hurt me. Those words should have made Ava feel better. Instead, they made her feel worse. She lifted the tissue paper. The sneakers were still spotless. As she adjusted them, something small slipped from beneath the cardboard insert. A folded piece of paper drifted onto the floor. Rose immediately leaned forward. Oh! She reached for it, but Ava picked it up first. It was a receipt. Old. Much older than she expected. The paper had already begun fading. She unfolded it carefully. The purchase date caught her attention. Almost 11 months earlier. She frowned. Grandma! You bought these almost a year ago? Rose smiled awkwardly. I did. But my birthday was last week. I know. Ava looked confused. Why would you buy them so early? Rose hesitated. I didn't. For the first time that afternoon, Rose looked uncomfortable. Not because she regretted the gift. Because she had never intended anyone to know what it had cost her. I put them on hold. Rose laughed softly at herself. The store manager was very kind. I paid a little at a time. Ava blinked. What do you mean? I couldn't afford them all at once. The room became very quiet. I'd stop in every Friday. If I had $10, I'd leave 10. If I had 5, I'd leave 5. Eventually, they were paid for. Ava stared at the receipt. Each payment had been handwritten in blue ink. Small amounts. $8, 12, 5, 7, 9, month after month. Her throat tightened. The shoes hadn't been bought in one afternoon. They had been earned, one careful Friday at a time. Rose stood. I'll get us more tea. As she disappeared into the kitchen, Ava carefully placed the receipt back into the box. Then something else caught her eye. Tucked beneath the cardboard insert, another folded piece of paper. Different handwriting. Older. The edges had yellowed. She unfolded it. It wasn't addressed to her. It simply read, Rose. The handwriting belonged to her grandfather. He had passed away nearly 9 years earlier. Ava immediately looked toward the kitchen. She knew she probably shouldn't read it. But one sentence was already visible. If I'm not here one day. She froze. Then continued. The letter wasn't long. It spoke about ordinary things. The garden. The house. Their children. Near the end, one paragraph stood out. You always spend your money taking care of everyone else. Promise me that when I'm gone, you'll finally start buying things for yourself. Don't wear broken glasses because you're saving for someone else. Don't patch the same coat every winter. And don't skip the things you need just because someone else might want something. You deserve kindness too. Ava slowly lowered the letter. She looked toward the kitchen. At that exact moment, she noticed the taped reading glasses resting beside the sink. The old kettle she'd seen for years. The patched sweater hanging near the door. Suddenly, none of those things seemed ordinary anymore. The clues had always been there. She simply hadn't been looking. A knock interrupted the silence. Mrs. Jenkins stepped inside carrying a basket of fresh peaches. Oh, I didn't realize you had company. Rose smiled. Ava stopped by. Mrs. Jenkins beamed. That's wonderful. She handed Rose the basket, then looked at Ava. I'm glad you came. Before anyone could respond, she added casually, I kept telling your grandmother to stop walking to the shopping center. Rose immediately looked embarrassed. Margaret. It's all right. Mrs. Jenkins continued. She insisted on saving every bus fare. Said she'd rather put the money toward your birthday. Rose looked down. I didn't mind walking. Mrs. Jenkins smiled sadly. You walked in snow. You walked in rain. You even walked after your knee started bothering you. Rose laughed softly. It wasn't that bad. Mrs. Jenkins shook her head. You wouldn't even let me drive you. The room fell silent. Mrs. Jenkins realized she had said more than she intended. I should get going. She quietly excused herself. The front door closed. Sometimes, the people who love us accidentally reveal the truths we were never supposed to hear. For several long moments, neither Ava nor Rose spoke. Ava couldn't stop seeing the numbers on the receipt. $5, $7, $8. Tiny sacrifices repeated over and over. She thought about the designer dress she'd bought in under 3 minutes. It had taken nearly a year. She remembered her own words. These probably cost $20. The sentence echoed in her mind like a punishment. She covered her face. I'm so sorry. Rose immediately moved beside her. You don't have to cry. Yes. I do. I made fun of the one thing you worked hardest for. Rose gently shook her head. I wasn't sad because of the shoes. Ava looked up. I was sad because... Rose paused. I worried I'd forgotten how to make you smile. Those words shattered what little composure Ava had left. That was the cruelest part. Rose hadn't spent the week wondering whether the gift had been expensive enough. She'd spent it wondering whether she'd failed as a grandmother. Just then, the old landline rang. Rose answered. Hello. Her expression changed. She thanked the caller quietly before hanging up. Ava looked concerned. What happened? Rose forced a smile. Oh, the doctor's office. They've moved my appointment to tomorrow morning. Just routine. But Ava noticed something. Rose folded the appointment card and slipped it into her pocket a little too quickly, almost as if she didn't want anyone to read it. Ava wanted to believe it really was routine. She wanted to believe there would be plenty of time to make things right. She didn't know that by the following afternoon, everything would change again, and the apology she had finally spoken would no longer feel like enough. The longest nights are often followed by the shortest mornings. Ava barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the receipt. $5, $7, $8. Every tiny payment felt heavier than the last. She kept replaying the moment she laughed. The expression on Grandma Rose's face. Not angry, not offended, just disappointed. Not in Ava, in herself, as if she'd somehow failed to choose the right gift. That thought hurt more than anything. At 7:30 the next morning, Ava pulled into Grandma Rose's driveway. Rose looked surprised. You came. I thought I'd drive you. Oh, sweetheart. You don't have to miss work. I already called in. Rose smiled softly. You've always been stubborn. Ava laughed through tired eyes. I learned from you. For the first time in days, they both smiled naturally. The silence during the drive felt different now. Comfortable. Not awkward. Almost healing. The waiting room smelled like coffee and disinfectant. Rose quietly filled out paperwork. Ava noticed something. Under emergency contact, Grandma had written, Ava Brooks. Not her daughter. Not her son. Her. A lump formed in Ava's throat. She hadn't even known. After nearly 40 minutes, a nurse called. Rose Bennett. Rose stood slowly, then turned toward Ava. I'll only be a few minutes. I'll be right here. I know. The examination room door closed. The waiting began. Minutes stretched. 5, 10, 20, 30. Finally, the doctor stepped into the hallway. Ms. Brooks. Ava stood immediately. Everything all right? The doctor smiled warmly. Nothing alarming. Your grandmother's heart is doing well. We're mostly concerned about her knee. She needs surgery eventually. But she's postponed it twice. Ava frowned. Why? The doctor hesitated. She said there were more important things to pay for. Ava already knew the answer. The shoes. On the drive home, Ava asked quietly, "Can we stop somewhere first?" Rose looked puzzled. Of course. Instead of driving home, Ava parked outside the small neighborhood bank. Rose looked confused. What are we doing here? I need 5 minutes. Inside, Ava withdrew nearly every dollar she'd been saving for a luxury vacation. The teller counted the cash. Nearly $6,000. Money she'd spent almost 2 years saving. She folded it carefully into an envelope. She handed it to Rose. Rose blinked. What is this? It's yours. Rose immediately tried to hand it back. Oh no. I can't accept this. You can. No. I won't. Ava gently pushed the envelope back into Rose's hands. You spent years making sure our family never went without. It's our turn. Rose's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted anything back. I know. That's why you deserve it. Later that afternoon, Ethan arrived. He immediately noticed the swollen eyes. What happened? Ava quietly handed him the receipt. He read every handwritten payment. Then the letter from Grandpa. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Finally, Ethan whispered, I made jokes too. Ava nodded. We both did. He looked around the room. The patched sweater. The taped glasses. The old kettle. Things he'd stopped seeing years ago. I never noticed. No. Ava answered softly. Neither did I. That Sunday, the entire family gathered again. Only this time, it wasn't for a birthday. It was simply dinner. The same dining room. The same table. But something had changed. Halfway through the meal, Ava stood. She gently picked up the shoebox. I have something to say. The room became silent. She looked at every member of the family, then at Grandma Rose. I owe someone an apology. She took a slow breath. I thought this gift was cheap. I laughed. I judged it. Without knowing what it truly cost. She held up the faded receipt. I want everyone here to see this. One by one, the family passed it around. No one spoke. Several quietly wiped away tears. Then Ava unfolded Grandpa's letter. She read the final paragraph aloud. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Ava smiled. I have one more present. She handed Rose a small wrapped box. Rose opened it slowly. Inside were brand new reading glasses. Not taped. Not scratched. Perfectly fitted. Beneath them, another envelope. Inside was confirmation that Grandma Rose's knee surgery had already been paid in full. Rose looked speechless. You did this. We all did. Ava looked around the room. Every member of the family smiled. Ethan nodded. Their parents reached across the table. For the first time, everyone had contributed. Not because Rose asked, because she never would. Several weeks later, Ava returned to Grandma's house. She opened the kitchen cabinet. The glass savings jar was there. Only this time, it wasn't empty. She smiled. Someone had quietly begun adding money. Few dollars here. $10 there. 20 another week. No one admitted to doing it. Because everyone was. The jar had become something new. Not a place where one grandmother sacrificed for everyone else. But a reminder. That love should never travel in only one direction. Months later, Rose's surgery was successful. She walked through her garden without pain. She no longer taped her glasses. She bought a warm winter coat. A new kettle sat on the stove. Not because she suddenly became wealthy, because her family had finally learned that caring for the person who always cares for everyone else isn't charity. It's gratitude. The most expensive gifts are rarely the ones with the highest price tags. Sometimes, they're the ones paid for. $5 at a time. A bus ride never taken. A new coat never bought. A pair of glasses repaired instead of replaced. The people who love us most often hide their sacrifices so well that we mistake them for ordinary. So before you judge someone's gift, ask yourself one question. What did they give up so they could give it to me? Because one day, The receipt may tell a story they never wanted you to know, and by then, you'll wish you had thanked them sooner. If this story touched your heart, take a moment today to call, visit, or hug someone who has quietly sacrificed for you. They may never tell you what they gave up, but that doesn't mean they gave up nothing. And if you believe love is measured by sacrifice rather than price, like, share, and subscribe.